welcome back. Thanks for joining the Then and Now podcast, where we go through some of your artists' catalogs that you have not heard from. Old things, new things, side projects, whatever it may be. This week I'm going to do two chunks, White Lion and Mike Tramp. And we'll find out what happened to Vito. But for now, we're going to start this Then and Now podcast. One of my favorite guitarists, Vito Bratta. Even one of my favorite songwriters, Mike Tramp, in White Lion. I'm also going to try and go in the chronological order that I heard the songs. I'm going to say probably the first iteration I'd heard of the band was the big hit on Z-Rock that they were throwing tantrums about because they didn't want to play this pretty boy band. Already I had heard something different in his guitar playing. It wasn't sporadic and just a melee of notes like Eddie Van Halen's tapping, but there seemed to be a little more purpose and choice of each of those notes. Vito Bratta, he was picked up initially because he could play Eruption note for note. I believe the earliest lineup featured Dave Spitz. Dave Spitz, the brother of Dan Spitz. Dan Spitz being the guitarist for Anthrax for a long, long time. I think that connection happened because Greg D'Angelo was one of the original drummers of Anthrax. Moves on over to White Lion, so Dave Spitz was playing bass for White Lion. But it's always been Vito and Mike, the two main guys of White Lion. Even by the end, you can kind of tell there'll be some stories about that. First album I saw was Pride. Giant white lion on the cover, but only the eyes, nose, and mouth. Not like a mane, not like anything. It was quite prominent as opposed to Motley Crue's Shout at the Devil or Blue Oyster Cult or anything that had come out at the time with dark imagery. So it did seem almost like a brighter, happier metal or hard rock. Whichever it was, I didn't care. I really, really dug the guitar work. And here's why. I would be remiss if I didn't say that the next song I heard was When the Children Cry. Not a power ballad, pure acoustic-driven song with a lovely electric guitar solo in the middle. Video seemed a little more socially conscious than what was going on at the time as well. There were instances, according to the band, where they kind of thought, why are we just all about the partying atmosphere? I think there was a schism between half of them wanting to be party and half of them wanting to be a little more responsible with what they were given. I can't say for sure. These are just stories. I don't even have notations for that kind of stuff, but it's all over the internet. And Mike Tramp says many, many times live now that there was an undercurrent that he was already willing to change, but the record labels were pushing the party heavy metal side.
No more presidents and all the wars will end. One united world under God.
It also seemed a little bit darker as far as a song like Patience by Guns N' Roses. It wasn't about a girl. It wasn't about necessarily a love song. So that was okay to deal with. The next song I actually heard off that album, I thought, oh, this is just a ripoff of the other song they put out as a single. But there seemed to be a lot more layers to Wait, the song they put out. I didn't feel there was as much goo, as much mushy, as much... It's a horribly written song. Wait, I never had a chance to love you, but I only want to say I love you one more time. Lyrically, that doesn't really flow all that great, and you have to understand Mike Tramp was Danish, and when you I've mentioned before, culturally deal with lyrics and language, there's just different syntax that happens. By now, this is their second album, Pride. They'd already migrated James Lomenzo and Greg D'Angelo into the band. So it's Vito, Mike, Greg, James. And one of the best solos of all time. Two-handed tapping, no picking until the very, very end flourish. There's so much to that solo. It seems like it's chopped up and pieced together. I still have a hard time playing that song because there's so many different jumps all over the fretboard. Something I would never, ever try to pull off live unless I'd practiced it with the actual band several times and we gotten that groove right. That was about my introduction to White Lion. The next section was more of a growth period for them and a growth period for me. I had been over at a friend's house, didn't even know they'd put out another album yet. This song comes on, and it's a video. I don't have any of their albums. I don't buy any of their cassettes. I just can't afford it. Don't have any money. I don't even really have like the right stereo stuff. I would take records, record them down to tape, and then put them in my Walkman in when I went to sleep at night. So the next song that came out was, to me, that I saw, was actually a cover by Golden Earring initially, and it showed the band a little more rough and tumble, a little more denim, a little more dirt, working on cars. Greg D'Angelo has his hair back almost in a samurai-looking ponytail, which is actually, for that era, kind of cool. So they're doing this song, Radar Love, that was done by Golden Earring in the 70s. Golden Earring's done a few songs, you know. Bullet Hits the Bone is one of them. There's another one in there I don't recall right now. But I sat down, saw this video, paid attention to it. It was a shortened version than the album version, I found out later. The fact that they were trying to be a little more just regular hard rock gained a lot of respect from me, and maybe even a little more of their peeps. So, trying not to be too much into it, the next song I'd heard was Little Fighter, and this intro, this was it. I was done.
Are you crying tonight? Are you feeling alright? I tell the world where you have died. of a kind.
Now, from the outsiders, it may seem a little formulaic. Intro, rocking riff, full band, rocking out. As a musician who was trying to learn guitar at the time, this was 1989. So I graduated high school. I hadn't really played guitar yet. But when I heard the intro parts, I felt as if the song itself, just on the guitar, could be played without any amplification, any band, and the song itself would be okay. Almost like a flamenco piece, but not as extravagant. Just an acoustic piece, and it would carry all the little licks and stuff all by itself. It didn't feel like it had to be sung to make it go. This little lick right here. Which I've discovered, not even discovered, was told, oh, that's an Eddie thing, or that's a so-and-so guitarist, that's a Bon Jovi thing. I didn't care. This was my intro to hard rock and metal. I wasn't into that many bands. White Lion comes out with Big Game in 1989. I hadn't the album. All I had was a video that I'd watched religiously every time I could over at a friend's house. And when I finally garnered enough money to buy the cassette single, all that was on the cassette was 2 songs. This was on one side, and the B-side was another song, but we're going to listen to this solo because it's manic and awesome. Items of note about this song, particularly. On the cassette single, as I mentioned, was one side Little Fighter. The other side, I'll get to in a moment. The song itself was not about a person. It was about this boat called the Rainbow Warrior that would go out to fishing boats that would accidentally catch dolphins in their tuna nets, or they were hunting whales, or getting ambergris illegally. I actually learned about ambergris from Bob's Burgers. Point being, the song was about that boat and that team of people. So that didn't seem all bad. I could approach and say, well, this isn't just about all partying and all that stuff. And then I would flip the tape over and it ended up being a song called Let's Get Crazy. It was a party song. It was one of those that just said, hey, let your hair down, get stupid, run around. I don't believe they mentioned specifically booze, partying, women, sex, drugs, rock and roll. It was just kind of a weekend song in my head. I didn't interpret it as anything but that. The shuffle, I get it. It's the ripoff of Hot for Teacher by Van Halen. Everybody understands that. But that shuffle had been around for years. It's been around since Jump, Jive, and Wail. It's been around since James Gang, Rocky Mountain Way. Yeah, Rocky Mountain Way. Dun 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 dun. Rock This Town. Various incarnations of the shuffle. This was just the drummer's way of expounding upon his regular metal roots. Because normally you're driving 2 and 4. 2, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4. When you get the shuffle, you actually get to throw in a little more jazz swing, a little more taddly-tiddly-tiddly-tiddly-da. I think that's what's made Greg D'Angelo an excellent drummer. The first couple albums, he was kind of mixed into reverb land. That's where they take the kick and the snare, and the technique was taking reverb, turning up the effect of reverb, so it sounded like a huge stadium or a huge arena, when in all honesty, it felt washed out. It felt a little too far away. I ultimately got the album. I finally got the album. I don't remember when, but when I'd heard the first song on it, it just emphatically enforced that I respected Vito Bratta, and he became one of my favorite guitarists. Two things about this song that kind of still get me. The acoustic intro, there's a couple parts in the middle where they do these slight bombs, these dives with a whammy bar, and the reverb kind of echoes and makes it sound a little more Pink Floyd-y. But that initial lick where he goes, I mock it a lot as the patented church worship guitarist lick. Some of my friends know what that is, some don't, but any church guitarist who's not versed, that's kind of my notification that, okay, they're new at this, or they just don't have that much of vocabulary. Let's focus on that and improve their structure and their song playing. That was one of those great songs that I just dug into. Another one was Broken Home. And again, the social consciousness under it was a bit more, I wouldn't say family-oriented, but they cared for the lesser. They cared for the broken down and the desolate. Even though you got crazy and you got stupid on the weekend, you still cared. So I felt a little more cohesiveness with them, or collusion myself. I've always been a caring person. Sometimes I seem like I don't care, or I say stuff that isn't very caring, but in the end I do. It also seemed like they were branching out musically more than the other bands of that time. And I think that kind of hurt them, only because the record label executives were stupid. It was told in one story I read somewhere that the song Cry for Freedom prison welfare was kind of the topic. So they cared. They pushed a little more social consciousness. But it's rumored that John Kalodner, who was a manager and a music producer and music director, just a higher up. If you've seen a picture of him, he's long, white and gray bearded dude. He's in a couple Aerosmith videos. He's been around for a long, long time. And it's wishy-washy as far as who said what to whom. Whether he said it or an executive said it or whatever. They were bolstering the band and saying, yeah, go that direction. But behind the closed doors, they were saying, how could you let them do that song? It ended up being a 6-minute song about fabulousness. Kind of something to care about. Something less about the party atmosphere of the 80s. This was 89, so it's the tail end. It's time to migrate to something better than the excess that we had. I actually really like this breakdown in the middle too. No solo, but it's just a nice driving bit where the drummer gets to expound again, and even the bass player a little. great song, great topic, great album. Still one of my top of all time. There's maybe 2 songs on that album I don't care for out of 11. So we're ranking that pretty high in my overall. Someday I'll make a list. We'll post it or something. We'll get dumb about it. It'll be great. That album's done in 89, and I'm starving for more of them. So I buy Pride. I'd only heard the singles. I've only played a little bit of their stuff. But I didn't really get into their albums until after. So their third album was Big Game. Their second album was Pride. I got into it mostly out of starvation. I also have a theory on the starvation diet. The reason why certain bands have made better progress. Let's take a band like, I'll say it, Creed. Creed in their own right was a pretty good band. Don't give me any crap about that, because they were. Mark Tremonti has his own project now, and then he has Alter Bridge with a different singer, so it's basically Creed with a different singer. Then Scott Stapp is now the solo artist with his band. That may be a story for another time, but each of them are playing Creed songs or Creed versions of the songs. And where I'm going with this is the starvation was Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam had put out albums, but were being a little more we're gonna hold back from the people and not give them another album yet. So to fill that void, usually another band pops in. Actually, Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam were kind of the Doors of the 90s. So you had this baritone voice singing. You had these weird licks, these different motifs and strategies to a song. And the Doors had done it forever. Through the 80s, we had a few in and outs of those possible replacements of the Doors, but in all honesty, the 80s just caught up to the Doors. So the 90s come around, Pearl Jam comes out. His voice is amazing and takes things over the edge. Then we have Stone Temple Pilots come out. They're the heavier version. Again, baritone voice. They kind of stall out. And a band like Creed fills that void. When I was waiting for the next White Lion album to come out, I'd purchased, I don't remember which cassette single it was, and I may have purchased the whole album, but the next song was the one on that album. It seemed out of place, and the topic seemed out of place, but I really dug the guitar parts on it. Hugeness of the drums, basically the reverb echo happening on the backside of it. There's another bit in this song as well. Listen to this theme. Of the Valley. Theme-wise, a little more Dungeons and Dragons, wizards and wieners, winos, whatever. But musically, I don't know who wrote it into it. It seemed Nordic to me. It seemed something from Europe area where they were a little more triumphant. Or we're on a hunt. We're searching out the Lady of the Valley. I remember that movie, The 13th Warrior. Almost like that. We've got to find the witch in the woods that's going to tell us how we defeat the fireworm. So Lady of the Valley was a nice filler for me in between on Pride. Even Hungry was good like that. So I had to fill out 2 years. Actually, I was behind the game. I was probably 90 when I got Big Game. But there was an issue of Guitar World magazine with Vito on the front that had the song Little Fighter in it, and I went ballistic. I bought it. I cherished that one magazine. I kept it in the perfect shelf spot. When I turned pages, I would do it very slowly as not to rip any of them, because I would have to buy another one and spend $4. I tried to learn every little bit of Little Fighter as I could. The problem was this. The song itself is in the key of F sharp. Now, what that means to guitarists is two things. You have to capo to get it up into F sharp at the 2nd fret. Or if you're tuned down to E flat, you have to capo at the 3rd fret. So already we're 2 frets different. We're already in 2 different spots of where we play this solo. Or you tune the guitar up to F sharp. Normally the guitar is in E, and to tune it up to F sharp, you're really putting a lot of stress on the neck, and those strings are going to pull harder and make the neck bow a little, so it's harder to play the song. So you've almost handicapped yourself if you've tuned it up like that. I believe in the video he's playing a Steinberger, which is this headless. It was of the era. It was headless. I believe you could tune it up. I'm not 100% on that. Headless on one end. The tuners were down on the right-hand side of the guitar player. It seemed awkward to me, but video-wise, it was telling me it was Weight all over again. It didn't seem like it was that much different, but the guitar work, you would stare and try and find, oh, what's that one part he's playing right there? That little do-do-do-do-do. I can't see it. I can't find it. And this was way before YouTube. This is before even VHS could record all these shows and we were hooked up to cable. The diet was easy. Make things up. And try and play this. I did tune the guitar to F sharp so I could play along with the rhythm parts. The solo was just too difficult, and I had this ancient Kalamazoo. It was the only guitar I had. I was saving up. I knew eventually I would buy an electric guitar, but I had to start on this Kalamazoo, this red thing that was passed down to me. Wait. I go to college, to a couple different colleges. Come to find out, they'd released the album. I didn't know anything about it, and there's a reason that there wasn't much fanfare. But I saw the video before I saw anything else from the next album. It was Broken Heart on Main Attraction. This album already sounded different to me, and I couldn't put a finger on it. Listen to the song, watch the video. The video was actually a live concert video they'd pieced together, and what I noticed was Mike Tramp's hair wasn't as big and bushy and blonde. Vito would let his bangs grow a little more. It was still James Lomenzo and Greg D'Angelo, so the lineup was still 3 albums in. That, in my mind, is always a indicator that They are all in this together. Label-wise, band-wise, songwriting-wise. That's a good thing. But behind the doors, there's usually a facet in a band of 4 or 3, 2 to one side, 2 to the other side, or 2 to one side, 1 to the other side. In a band of 4, it's very rarely 1 1 2 or 1 1 1 1. A trio could be 1 1 1, but that's definitely hard. You kind of vote 50-50 on all this stuff. So the song Broken Heart is out. It's rocking, it's ripping, I'm digging it. I don't know what to think, because the next song is definitively a pop song. Something I dug, and it felt formulaic, but I honestly didn't care. I thought the song was really, really good.
You know that it ain't always right when love finds a place in your heart. Do you want it? Do you need it? 'Cause love don't come easy.
Theme-wise, these two songs, Broken Heart, Love Don't Come Easy. I can skip the grammatical error, and Love Don't Come Easy musically was, to me, joyous, and a lot of guitar parts again. Broken Heart, simpler solo, but it was more aggressive. And funny story about Broken Heart, I'll tell you in a minute, because I love this solo. Again, didn't have the album, could only see the video. Bought the single. Don't remember what the B-side of the single on the cassette single was. Had to save up the money. Finally bought the album, Main Attraction, in 1991. I had waited and waited for this album and was pining for it. And it started off with something that seemed a little more thematic. It actually started off this podcast, but as far as the theme, it wasn't earthly. It was, there'll be lights and thunder, there'll be times of wonder, and there will be no lion. And I think they mean lying, not lion. But when I listen to the album, you might be able to hear what I'm talking about when I say it sounded a little different. I felt there was a sheen on the entire album, an effect that's usually put on in mastering, where they usually use it to widen the sound of an album or to make it sound thicker or more, just more of an album. You want a cohesive feeling on the whole album. Well, it sounds to me, now that I figured out, that they put chorusing on the whole album. It's almost got a slow warble to it, which is a great effect for one guitar. But when it was on the entire album, things that were supposed to be perfectly in tune seemed to warble out of tune a little. That's just my opinion. I don't know if they did do that or not. I didn't care. I loved it. was known for. Another song on this album. It was a time where funk metal was kind of pushing forward. White Trash, Extreme, Bang Tango. Some of these bands were trying to push a little more rhythmic attitude to it. A lot of killer stuff in there. Verses were a little odd to me, but again, I was hearing that chorusing effect over the entire mix, so I was having a little bit of trouble getting into the whole album. Lights and Thunder started off strong. I knew Love Don't Come Easy from the video. A Broken Heart was killer. There were just facets I was missing. I think there was an undercurrent that even the band knew. This might be their last shot. Just different stories around, say, different managers saying different things, different members of the band saying different things. There was also a couple love songs on this album. So, power ballady, but just very staid, regular. It was actually called Till Death Do Us Part. I think they were going for the KUDL. That's a radio station late at night that would play love songs and requests with Delilah. I think they were really going for that market to increase album sales because they weren't as strong as Pride. Big Game had been a little bit less. So when Till Death Do Us Part was released, there was the hope that it would be like the Meatloaf song that was so huge. One of those songs they probably should have sold to a lesser band or Meatloaf or Richard Marx or someone else to let them put strings all over it, to let them put, different effects and different pieces together to make it a more mushy-gushy love song. When a metal band, here's an item note, I'll get to that note later. When a metal band tries to go too mushy, it kind of shows that they weren't made for that. I don't know who was the primary writer or who pushed the song, but Till Death Do Us Part would probably be low on the totem pole for a bunch of executives, maybe even the band. Their only instrumental that I know of was called Blue Monday, track 11 on Main Attraction. Just the three of them jamming out, but with good reason. I wouldn't call it a ripoff, I would call it a homage, or as one friend would say, homage. Total blues-based song, slow, 16, 12 bar, where they were dedicating the song to Stevie Ray Vaughan. This was 1991. This was shortly after he had died in a helicopter crash. Showed a huge versatility to me. Vito didn't just have it on the neck pickup. He flipped it up, or on the bridge pickup. He flipped it up to the neck pickup. I also felt, tone-wise, man, he doesn't need effects or drive so much. I read in an article, maybe it was in that Guitar World article that I cherished so much. He just takes a Strat off the wall at Guitar Center or whatever. We're not plugging that store, we're plugging other things. Takes the Strat off the wall and can just play it and knows if that's the guitar he wants or not. And he predominantly played Strats. If you watch most of the live concerts, that's what he's doing. He played the Steinberger and a lot of stuff. There was also an instance early on, and I'll get to that story. I think he was playing a Les Paul, but I'm not 100% sure. But we'll come back to it in a second. This album is wrapping up. That's track 11. It's a great, great piece for Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I'm good with it. The sheen over it is still kind of getting me until this song comes. So I'll break this back. Chronologically, this was the order I heard the albums. Pride, Big Game, back to Pride, Main Attraction. But what I didn't know was the song they had played earlier on Main Attraction, Broken Heart, was actually a redo or a cover of their own song. They'd actually first song off their first album, Fight to Survive. Was 1984. So I was disconjointed because I'd loved the Main Attraction version of Broken Heart. What I didn't like was that they did their own song again. Why do bands keep doing that throughout the 80s? A theme I keep touching on. Well, maybe it was a hit before and it just wasn't widely released. It was off the album Fight to Survive, released in 84. I don't know. I'm not sure who pulled the trigger on it, but I'm going to say it was a decent song back then in 84. It was way better in 91. So I guess it does kind of transmigrate both decades there. So the next, as I'm listening to this album, the next song I hear, again, some of the themes I touch on, I think Scandinavians love Native Americans. There's some connection there. Somebody please enlighten me. Somebody email me at thethenandnowpodcast@gmail.com or at mavensmusic.com with the topic Scandinavians and Native Americans. Because I don't get the connection, but Europe did it. Not Mr. Big. There's another band from over there. Not Bonham. I can't think of the other name. White Lion does it. Europe did it a couple times. But listen to this chorus and you'll see what I mean. See what I mean? Now, this isn't a bad thing. It's 84. Let them go. We bring it back to 91, where things aren't going so well for the band. They're actually having to deal with record label issues. They're having to deal with, the first thing was James Lomenzo, the bass player, and Greg D'Angelo quit. There's an actual reason for that. So if you don't understand business or you don't understand how math works, just turn this off right now. The biggest facet for a band is the way things are split up. Mike and Vito had actually been writing all the songs, and they had put a far less percentage into James and Greg's cut, which is understandable. One's the vocalist, one's the main riff writer. Live, they were splitting it 4 ways, where 25% between the 4 of them, or whatever their cut of the 25%, the band's cut split 4 ways. So you take that, the other 2 guys are getting the larger chunks for writing. They felt it was a little bit of a slight. I can understand that. They all move on from that. The 2 guys leave. They pick up, who's it say here? They both go and join Zakk Wylde's band. Initially it was Leonard Skinhead. Became Pride and Glory, which had a great song called Losing Your Mind on it. I loved that song. It started with this acoustic dobro kind of thing. Lomenzo goes on to tour with David Lee Roth, plays in Black Label Society. Greg D'Angelo just kind of does some other stuff. It's not the total end of the band White Lion. It's Vito. He can't take it anymore. His mother is fading in health, and he needs to stop. And that is 100% understandable. He tries to produce a couple bands, nothing really goes. Still does some interviews, but kind of shuts it all down. In the end, Mike Tramp was in need and sold all the rights to the songs of those publishing parts that I mentioned, the cut, to Vito. Vito now owns all of White Lion's album catalog. So anytime those songs are redone, they all have to come back to Vito. Vito's doing all right. You see several versions of different albums released that are greatest hits. You see those ones that are called Icon. They're greatest hits or extended versions. I think there was even one. It wasn't Return of the Pride. It was I can't remember what it was called. Return of the Pride was actually the attempt to restart White Lion.
You say it ain't so, you don't know, but what should I believe? You seem so sad, you get so mad, but is it in your mind? You gotta believe things they happen for a reason. You gotta hold on, there ain't nothing you can do every time. And I'm worth just so it out every time. You are wasted, you better taste it. Anything you want, anything you need, you got it. Just open your eyes and take a good look inside.
So this was White Lion, Return of the Pride. There's also Mike Tramp's White Lion that does a thing called Last Roar. And he takes the actual White Lion songs, redoes them in a different format. There was a couple that were okay. He does All the Fallen Men, Wait, When the Children Cry, and the versions I'm not even going to recommend. I would if you were not a White Lion fan and knew what they were before. If it was just, I needed a song, I gotta throw it in here. And I think that's why he re-recorded them that way. Again, the industry secret is if you re-record the song, the new recording you can sell and then use that to get more publishing. Versus the older one is usually still owned by the old record label, and they will not relinquish it without a substantial fee. Return of the Pride does some touring, does some things. Interspersed, this is 2008 by the way, interspersed with all of that, Mike Tramp does have a solo career that kicks up in 1998. I'm going to do a whole separate episode on that because it's been 20 years since he started that career. But here's Battle at Little Big Horn. Not horrible. It's actually, if you know the CDDB or the Grace Note labeling system that is used by most of your media players. I don't know how Spotify is tied in. You should probably look that up. But when a media player tags your song, they put it under a certain genre or classification. This was actually called glam metal, Return of the Pride. The other ones were just rock. With the exception of one, the very first album, Fight to Survive, is actually classified as soft metal. And in all honesty, probably their heaviest or darkest album was soft metal. But glam metal did well for its era. I don't know why they relabeled it in 2008 glam metal, because I wouldn't call it that. I would just call this hard rock. This would conclude the then and the and of White Lion. The now and then a little bit of the then will be Mike Tramp in the next episode. I've rambled on this one because I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to go. I felt better and more energetic about the topic without doing a bunch of cuts and edits. So this is actually one large raw piece. And I'm just going to keep it as it is. I'm just going to upload it as it is. There'll be a lot of ums, ahs, weird noises, but I'll try and balance it all out and make it work for you. So we'll leave you with the last bit of White Lion, Return of the Pride. Different band lineup. It wasn't the same guitarist, wasn't the same bass player, wasn't the same drummer. It was Mike Tramp's White Lion. He did a couple live albums as well with that band lineup. And then all his solo stuff we'll get to later. Thanks again, White Lion. You have been a source of inspiration for me.